The neighborhood had always been a place where appearances mattered more than anything else. The homes lined up in perfect symmetry, lawns clipped to regulation height, and mailboxes all painted the same shade of dull beige. It was the kind of neighborhood where the homeowners association dictated not only what color you could paint your shutters, but also how many seasonal decorations you were allowed to display. For most residents, it was just easier to comply, but every now and then someone pushed against the rules. In my case, that something happened to be a turkey. The turkey wasn't planned. It wasn't something I went out of my way to get. It started when a friend who lived just outside town told me about a bird that had wandered onto his property. Wild, stubborn, and a little too bold for its own good, the turkey seemed to have chosen him as a temporary caretaker. My friend didn't want to deal with it, so somehow it ended up with me. At first, I thought it would only stay a few days, but the turkey quickly made itself comfortable. It strutted around the yard like it owned the place, puffed up its feathers whenever someone came too close, and had a habit of standing guard at the end of my driveway like it was a watchman. Despite its quirks, I didn't mind. It was funny, even endearing. The bird didn't cause any damage, didn't make much noise except for the occasional gobble, and mostly kept to itself. But in an HOA neighborhood where even a flower pot in the wrong spot could cause outrage, it didn't take long for my turkey to become a problem. The first sign of trouble came when a letter appeared in my mailbox. The envelope bore the HOA's official stamp, and the words inside were predictably stern. "Livestock," it declared, "is not permitted within the neighborhood." The turkey was labeled a nuisance and against community guidelines. I read the letter twice, then looked out the window where the turkey stood in the grass, pecking idly at the ground. It looked harmless to me, certainly less of a nuisance than the barking dogs on the next block or the squealing leaf blowers that seemed to run all weekend. Still, the HOA had spoken. The person behind the letter didn't take long to reveal herself. Her name was Carol, though around the neighborhood, she had earned the less flattering nickname of Karen. She was the self-appointed enforcer of all things HOA, the type of person who measured the grass on her neighbors' lawns and photographed garbage bins left out for more than a day. Her word carried weight only because she was relentless. She showed up at meetings, called in violations, and made herself impossible to ignore. I noticed her watching the turkey one afternoon from across the street. She stood with arms crossed, lips pressed tightly together, her face twisted with the kind of disapproval only she could manage. The turkey, oblivious, flared its feathers and strutted toward her. She stepped back quickly, muttering under her breath before hurrying off. I knew then that she wasn't going to let it go. For a while, nothing happened beyond more letters, each one more urgent than the last. They piled up on my counter, their wording increasingly dramatic. Phrases like immediate removal, possible fines, and community safety hazard appeared in bold print. I knew Karen was behind them. Her determination always escalated, and she had a reputation for taking things further than anyone else would dare. The breaking point came one bright Saturday morning. The air was crisp, the sky clear, and the sound of lawnmowers buzzed faintly in the background. I was inside, sipping coffee by the window, when I saw Karen march across the street. She wore her usual sun hat and oversized sunglasses, her clipboard tucked tightly under her arm like it was a weapon. Her eyes locked on the turkey who was scratching at the grass near the driveway. Karen stopped, set down the clipboard, and began waving her arms. From inside the house, I couldn't hear her words, but I didn't need to. The turkey's head shot up, its feathers bristling, and its body stiffened as though insulted. Karen leaned closer, pointing and yelling, her voice sharp enough to carry faintly even through the glass. The turkey responded the only way it knew how, by charging. It was sudden, a blur of feathers and claws tearing across the grass. Karen shrieked, spinning on her heels, her hat flying off as she stumbled backward. The turkey chased her with surprising speed, gobbling loudly as it flapped its wings. Across the perfectly trimmed lawns, the bizarre scene unfolded like a comedy sketch, an HOA enforcer fleeing in panic from an angry bird. Neighbors peeked out their windows, a few even stepping onto their porches, drawn by the commotion. Karen ran, her sandals slapping against the pavement, until she finally managed to scramble onto the porch of another house. She pressed herself against the door, gasping for breath, while the turkey strutted in circles below, feathers puffed and chest heaving with victory. For several long moments, neither moved. Then, as if satisfied, the turkey turned away and wandered back toward my yard. The neighborhood was buzzing after that. Whispers spread quickly, each retelling of the chase becoming more dramatic than the last. Some laughed openly about it, while others shook their heads in disapproval. But everyone agreed on one thing. Karen had finally met her match. Of course, Karen herself didn't see it that way. By evening, another letter appeared in my mailbox, this one more heated than ever. Words like dangerous animal, personal attack, and legal consequences jumped out from the page. She had gone from irritated to furious, and I knew she wasn't going to stop until she had her revenge. The turkey, meanwhile, roosted calmly in the corner of my yard, as if nothing had happened. But I had a feeling the battle with Karen had only just begun. And sure enough, the very next morning, the war escalated in a way none of us could have predicted. By the next morning, the memory of Karen's panicked sprint across the neighborhood had already taken on a life of its own. Stories flew faster than gossip ever had. Some said the turkey leapt at her head, others claimed it pecked her clipboard into splinters, and a few insisted she fainted right on someone's porch. None of it was true, but the exaggerations fed the fire. Everyone seemed to enjoy the tale, everyone except Karen. She emerged that morning with a face set in stone, her sunglasses covering eyes that surely burned with fury. She walked from house to house, knocking on doors and gathering signatures on a petition. Her goal was clear. The turkey had to go. She spoke of public safety, of disease, of property values in jeopardy. For every neighbor who smirked at her behind closed doors, there was another who didn't want to be caught in her crosshairs and signed just to avoid her wrath. Within hours, Karen had collected a thick stack of names, her clipboard once again her weapon of choice. The turkey, oblivious, went about its day. It strutted in the sun, fluffed its feathers against the morning breeze, and even stood proudly on the hood of my car for a stretch of time, surveying the neighborhood like a general inspecting his troops. To him, nothing was wrong, but beneath the surface, a storm was brewing. That evening, an emergency HOA meeting was called. Attendance was higher than usual, thanks in no small part to Karen's dramatic storytelling. She described the turkey as a beast, a wild predator that terrorized the community. She spoke of scratches, pecking, and the threat of permanent disfigurement. She even raised her arms and flapped them for effect, mimicking the bird's charge to gasps and laughter alike. But not everyone sided with her. A few residents pointed out that the turkey hadn't hurt anyone, and most agreed that the chase had been more comical than dangerous. Still, Karen's persistence was a force that could not be ignored. By the end of the meeting, the HOA board declared the turkey in violation of neighborhood rules. I was officially ordered to remove it within 7 days. I left the meeting with a stack of papers and a sinking feeling. It wasn't that I couldn't find a new home for the turkey, it was that I didn't want to. By then, the bird had become more than a guest. It was part of my daily life, a kind of unexpected companion. Watching it strut across the yard so bold and unafraid reminded me that not everything had to fit into the HOA's neat, rigid boxes. The turkey seemed to sense my mood. That night, as the neighborhood quieted down, it perched closer to my porch than usual, as if standing guard. Its glossy feathers shimmered faintly under the porch light, and its low, steady noises filled the silence. It felt like a silent pact had been made between us. If Karen wanted a battle, we'd face it together. But Karen wasn't done. She never stopped at rules alone. The next morning, she staged a spectacle. As the sun rose, she marched into the street armed with her phone and a camera tripod. She set it up directly across from my house, the lens aimed squarely at my yard. Then she stood beside it, narrating loudly about the dangerous intruder in the neighborhood. Her voice carried across the block, waking children and irritating those who worked late shifts. The turkey didn't take kindly to being filmed. At first, it ignored her, pecking at the ground in indifference. But when Karen stepped closer, waving her arms for dramatic effect, the bird bristled. Its feathers flared, its chest puffed out, and once again it let out a sharp gobble before charging forward. The chase was even more dramatic than the first. Karen shrieked, her camera wobbling as she tried to flee without abandoning her equipment. The turkey pursued her in a wild circle, wings flapping furiously, beak snapping in indignation. She darted left, then right, trying to outmaneuver the bird, but the turkey was relentless. Neighbors peeked from their windows, some chuckling, others recording the scene on their phones. Karen finally abandoned her tripod, sprinting down the block with the turkey hot on her heels. This time she didn't stop at a porch. She ran all the way to her house, fumbling with her keys before slamming the door behind her. The turkey strutted proudly back to my yard, victorious once more, while her abandoned camera lay tilted in the street. By midday, the video was everywhere. Neighbors who had filmed the chase posted it online, and within hours it had been shared far beyond the confines of our subdivision. The internet loved it. HOA Lady versus Angry Turkey became a headline, and the clip spread like wildfire. Comments poured in from strangers cheering on the bird, mocking Karen's over-the-top reaction, and labeling the turkey a hero against petty HOA tyranny. For the first time, Karen found herself not just disliked, but ridiculed on a scale she couldn't control. The neighborhood laughed, the internet laughed, and the turkey became an unlikely local celebrity. But humiliation only made her more dangerous. That evening, she emerged again, lips pressed tightly, her jaw set with determination. She didn't speak to anyone, didn't acknowledge the laughter or the whispers. Instead, she made phone calls. Long, angry phone calls that carried across the street as she paced her front lawn. By the end of the night, it was clear she had escalated beyond HOA rules and neighborhood petitions. She was calling animal control. She wanted the turkey gone for good, and this time she had outside forces on her side. The bird, meanwhile, roosted quietly, unaware of the storm that was gathering against it. But I knew Karen wasn't going to stop until she either had the turkey removed or destroyed my peace entirely. And when animal control arrived the following morning, the real war began. The morning animal control arrived, the neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. Their white truck rolled slowly down the street, the county logo stamped on the side, and the sight alone was enough to draw people out onto porches and lawns. For many, it was just entertainment, something unusual to break up the monotony of manicured hedges and HOA newsletters. For Karen, though, it was vindication. She stood at the curb in her oversized sunglasses, clipboard clutched tightly, her lips pulled into a thin smile. The officers stepped out, calm and professional, carrying equipment designed for stray dogs and wandering cats. They didn't look prepared for a full-grown turkey with an attitude problem. They approached my yard with cautious steps, glancing toward the bird who stood near the driveway. The turkey didn't move at first. It simply watched, head tilted, its eyes sharp and unblinking. Karen wasted no time inserting herself into the situation. She gestured wildly toward the bird, talking over the officers, pointing at me across the lawn and shouting about endangerment and legal violations. Her voice carried down the street, echoing against garage doors, and neighbors leaned out of their windows to listen. The officers finally waved her off and focused on the turkey. One of them extended a long pole with a loop at the end, the kind used to restrain aggressive animals. He moved slowly, speaking softly, but the turkey wasn't fooled. It let out a sharp gobble, feathers rising like a storm cloud. Its body stiffened, chest puffed to twice its normal size, and then, without warning, it charged. The officer stumbled backward as the bird lunged, wings flapping with a thunderous beat. The loop missed its mark entirely, and the turkey barreled straight through the grass, chasing the man in wide circles. His partner tried to intervene, but the turkey shifted directions with surprising agility, forcing both men into a frantic retreat. Their equipment clattered against the pavement as they scrambled, and the bird strutted triumphantly in their wake. The neighborhood erupted into laughter. Phones were out again, recording every second, capturing the scene in crystal-clear detail. Karen, however, was not laughing. She stood frozen, her mouth open in disbelief, her perfect plan unraveling before her eyes. The officers regrouped, embarrassed but not willing to give up. They circled back, trying a new approach. This time, they attempted to lure the bird with food, scattering bits of grain and bread across the lawn. The turkey sniffed at it, pecked once or twice, then ignored the bait entirely. Instead, it marched back to its post near the driveway, chest still puffed with indignation, as if daring anyone to try again. After nearly an hour of failed attempts, the officers admitted defeat. They muttered something about territorial behavior and not worth the risk, before retreating to their truck. Karen's outrage was visible from across the street. She stomped forward, waving her clipboard, demanding they try again, but the officers simply shook their heads and drove away. The turkey had won another battle, but Karen wasn't one to surrender. That afternoon, she stormed from house to house, her voice rising as she gathered a new crowd. She ranted about liability, lawsuits, and how the turkey had attacked government officials. She tried to spin the failure into something that strengthened her cause, though the smirks and chuckles of her neighbors told a different story. What she didn't realize was that the turkey's fame had only grown. The second video, this time featuring Animal Control's defeat, spread across social media even faster than the first. The bird had become a symbol, a local legend. Memes popped up with captions like Turkey 2, HOA 0, and Guard Bird of the Year. Strangers online cheered for it, rooting for the underdog, or in this case, the under-turkey, against the pettiness of HOA rules. The attention only made Karen more desperate. Days passed, each one marked by her increasingly erratic attempts to rid the neighborhood of the bird. She filed complaints with City Hall. She mailed letters to the county commissioner. She even called the police, though they quickly dismissed her claims as frivolous. Each rejection pushed her deeper into frustration, and her obsession with the turkey began consuming her every move. Meanwhile, the turkey lived as though it were untouchable. It strutted across lawns, perched on fences, and even wandered up to the HOA's clubhouse during one of their board meetings. Scratching at the grass near the entrance as if mocking them all, children adored it, giggling as it puffed its feathers and chased them playfully. Adults, even those who disliked the disruption, admitted it was more amusing than harmful. For the first time, Karen found herself outnumbered in her crusade. One evening, however, the tension came to a head. The sun was setting, the sky streaked in orange and pink when Karen marched across the street once again. This time, she carried no clipboard, no petition. Instead, she dragged a large dog crate behind her, muttering to herself with grim determination. She had decided to take matters into her own hands. The turkey spotted her immediately. It tilted its head, feathers bristling, as she approached the yard. Karen crouched low, fumbling with the crate door, trying to lure the bird inside with scraps of food she tossed onto the ground. The turkey stepped closer, cautious but unafraid. Neighbors watched from porches, holding their breath, their eyes wide with anticipation. For a brief moment, it seemed Karen might succeed. The turkey pecked at the ground near the crate, edging closer and closer. Karen's eyes gleamed with victory as she reached for the door. But then, with sudden clarity, the bird snapped its head up, recognizing the trap. It let out a loud, angry gobble and lunged straight at her. Karen screamed, tripping over the crate as the turkey flapped furiously, feathers flying in every direction. She stumbled backward, landing hard on the grass, while the bird pecked at the crate, sending it toppling onto its side. The scene was chaotic, frantic, and loud enough to draw half the block outside. By the time Karen scrambled back to her feet, dirt smeared across her clothes and hair askew, the turkey had already claimed victory. It strutted proudly over the overturned crate, chest puffed, wings spread wide, as if declaring the entire neighborhood its territory. Karen fled again, humiliated, while laughter and applause echoed across the street. But this time, something in her expression was different. Beneath the rage and embarrassment, there was something sharper, darker. She wasn't just angry anymore, she was plotting. The turkey had beaten her in public, had humiliated her in front of her neighbors, and had turned her into a laughingstock online. For Karen, this was no longer about HOA rules or safety. It was personal. And in that moment, as the turkey settled calmly back into my yard, I knew Karen's next move wouldn't be as simple as letters or petitions. She was planning something bigger, something that could change everything. The calm before the storm had ended. The night after Karen's failed attempt with the dog crate, the neighborhood seemed unusually still. Porch lights flickered on, casting long shadows across neatly trimmed lawns, but there was an uneasiness in the air. People spoke in hushed tones, watching from behind curtains as if expecting something to happen. And they were right to. Karen's obsession had reached a breaking point. She had tried rules, complaints, petitions, animal control, and even her own hands. Each attempt had ended the same way, with her humiliated and the turkey victorious. By now, she wasn't just fighting a bird. She was fighting her own crumbling reputation. In her mind, every gobble was mockery, every feathered strut a reminder of her failure. That night, she waited until most of the block had gone quiet. Then, under the cover of darkness, she made her move. Dressed in black from head to toe, she crept across the street, dragging behind her a large net and a duffel bag filled with tools. It was no longer about HOA regulations. This was about revenge. The turkey, ever vigilant, roosted near the edge of the yard, perched on a low branch of a tree. Its silhouette was sharp against the moonlight, feathers ruffled in the cool night air. It shifted slightly as though sensing movement, its small dark eyes glinting. Karen crouched low, inching forward, gripping the net in her hands. She muttered under her breath, her anger propelling her toward the bird. She was close enough to smell the grass damp with dew when she finally lunged. The net flew through the air, but the turkey was quicker. With a powerful flap of its wings, it launched upward, narrowly escaping the trap. The net slammed into the ground, tangling in the grass. Karen cursed, pulling it free. But the turkey had already landed behind her, feathers puffed and wings spread wide in defiance. The chase was on again. Unlike the earlier daylight spectacles, this one unfolded in eerie silence, broken only by Karen's grunts and the heavy beat of wings. She ran across the yard, swinging the net wildly, while the turkey darted and dodged with uncanny speed. It led her in circles, weaving through flower beds and around trees, each step sending her deeper into frustration. Then, in her fury, she made a fatal mistake. She sprinted toward the turkey, misjudging the slope of the lawn. Her foot caught on the edge of a sprinkler head, and she went sprawling forward. The net flew from her hands, her body crashing into the ground with a dull thud. For a moment, she didn't move. The turkey approached cautiously, its feathers still bristled. It circled her once, twice, before letting out a triumphant gobble that echoed across the block. Neighbors, drawn by the noise, began flicking on lights, stepping onto porches, and whispering among themselves. Within minutes, half the street had gathered to watch. Karen finally pushed herself up, grass and dirt smeared across her clothes, her sunglasses long gone. Her hair clung to her face in messy strands, and her pride had taken yet another public beating. She looked around at the crowd of neighbors, their expressions ranging from amusement to pity, and she realized she had lost. Not just to the turkey, but to the entire community. In the days that followed, Karen's presence faded. She stopped making her rounds, stopped waving her clipboard, stopped showing up at HOA meetings. Her house, once the beacon of enforcement, grew quiet. Some said she had filed one last desperate complaint before retreating indoors. Others claimed she was too embarrassed to show her face after being bested so many times by a bird. Whatever the truth, her reign of control was over. The turkey, on the other hand, became a legend. It continued strutting through the neighborhood like it owned the place, basking in its newfound fame. Children left treats for it at the end of driveways, adults laughed whenever they saw it patrolling the lawns, and online, the videos of its victories spread to millions. The bird wasn't just a pet anymore, it was a symbol of resistance against petty rules and overzealous authority. Eventually, even the HOA board backed down. Quietly, without fanfare, they stopped issuing letters. They stopped talking about livestock violations and safety hazards. They had learned what everyone else already knew. The turkey wasn't going anywhere. As for me, I simply went about my days, sipping coffee on the porch while my feathered companion strutted proudly across the yard. Life returned to its rhythm, with one small but significant difference. Where once the neighborhood had been ruled by fear of Karen's clipboard, it was now ruled by laughter and the occasional gobble. The battle had been long, ridiculous, and louder than anyone expected. But in the end, the message was clear. Sometimes all it takes to topple a tyrant is a bird with enough courage to chase them across the lawn. And the turkey, as always, stood guard at the end of the driveway, victorious, unchallenged, and forever the unlikely hero of the neighborhood.